Oh, wait.
Hi, Jim.
Hello. Mute yourself.
I was on mute, but every time I see you, I can't mute myself. I can't resist.
No, because you may interrupt, and this is going to be.
Is this going to be a live presentation? Or are you just going to roll the tape?
Jim, you look pretty live to me. It's less.
Hey, Jim? Something's wrong with the
Jim
volume.
Tobak.
Try this.
Jill, his wife Jill, is the past president.
Could this be on mute?
All right, Ann and Stacy are here, but I'm muted.
Okay, I'll give it a couple more minutes. People are still coming in and then we'll start. Okay, we're gonna get started. I ask everyone to stay muted except our guest speaker today. And it is my great honor to introduce Jim Tobak, who's a longtime member of Temple Beth El and has become an expert on Zoom after my training this week. So I am honored to introduce him, and it's a beautiful day, so I know everybody's trying to enjoy that. So we will get going with Jim Tobak. This is live to Facebook, so we ask you again just to, if you know your camera's on and you don't want it on, you can turn it off. If you have questions or comments, please put it in the chat room. And I welcome Jim Tobak for his insightful thoughts today.
Yeah, you're muted, Jim. You're going to want to unmute.
Mute. Okay. Hey, I'm unmuted. But thank you very much, Judy. Insightful, maybe a slight exaggeration, but hey, you know, always appreciated. And thank you, everybody, for spending a few minutes with me. It was about 2 hours, but my wife Jill sort of reined me in, so it's considerably less than that. I'd particularly like to thank all of you for inviting me into your computers, and I'll muck around for a little while, and hopefully 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and be gone. And I don't think you'll notice much of a difference, but you might want to call in an IT person just to make sure I haven't done anything damaging, which is completely possible. I'd also like to particularly thank Rabbi Mack, Judy Mosley, Cantor Sepulwin, and the Temple Beth El community for giving me this opportunity to present my hopes and dreams. And I'd like to just for one moment mention that hopes and dreams have been part of Temple Beth El's tradition, although somewhat irregular. There was none last year, maybe for the obvious reasons. And what I've really been impressed by almost all of the hopes and dreams that we've heard. In fact, all of them. Particularly a friend of ours, Lillian Birch, gave an absolutely inspiring hopes and dreams address about ending childhood hunger, and it was beautiful. Several people have spoken about global warming, which has been really quite impressive. One woman, as I recall, I don't recall her name, but I'm 75, so that may slip at times, but she sang a medley of songs extolling the patriotism of the patriots of America. And this is slightly different, but what I'm going to do is a couple of caveat zooms to start. And my first caveat zoom is the opinions expressed herein are not necessarily those of Temple Bethel clergy, management, staff, members, pets, anyone else living with me at 40 Brenton Avenue. Jill, you're not included. These are my hopes and dreams, and I'm sticking to them. But again, thank you for allowing me to do this. The second thing I'd like to do, I've recently been advised that honesty is the best policy, and that really sort of struck me as, wow, that's something. The upcoming event promo for this hopes and dreams had I'll like to call it a minor fib. And if Judy could show the photo that was in the hopes and dreams address was me when I claimed to be close to bar mitzvah age. Actually, I was 7 or 8. Extraordinarily cute. I had probably 2 years where my cheeks were black and blue from being pinched. This photo shows me at actually closer to 11 and 12. It's something I like to think of it as a Norman Rockwell-esque, the happy family photo -1. And I program after it was after the photo because of the person that was there. The second thing I would say, and my cousin Ronnie actually sent me that photo, but he's enlarged the photo of me at 11 or 12, and I'm going to put this on the screen myself. This is a photo of me at 11 or 12, which I have inscribed and signed. If people have preteen middle schoolers who look like they're heading for a life of teenage moroseness, I will gladly share this with you, which hopefully will I think this would scare them straight. I've signed it. This doesn't have to be you, ! Please, the kid in the photo. So again, I apologize for the fib, but maybe that's poetic license. What I'd like to talk about next, and actually the start of my hopes and dreams, but really Jill's role. This has been a long process for me, and I had an idea that I thought was a terrific idea. It turned out not to be so terrific, but it has been developed in large measure because of Jill, who is my muse. And I'd say over the last month and a half, I'd call her more an unamused muse, because she's had to deal with me throwing hissy fits and being in general pretty obnoxious. But she did sit me down and said, in a rather, well, not quite diplomatic way, Jim, focus. What you have to do is present your theme or thesis, make it simple and concise. Following what my wife told me to do, I have 2 words: more Judaism. That's my thesis. That's my theme. Now, I suspect some of you may think that that's mere pandering. I would strenuously disagree, strenuously object. That is base, shameless pandering to the audience. And as I thought about it, if pandering were a crime, I'd be looking at 3 to 5. But that is my theme for my hopes and dreams, and I'm sticking to it. I will elaborate and talk a little more about it and why I came up with that as the title of my hopes and dreams address. And Judy, I'm going to ask you to put the second insert on the screen. This insert actually comes, it's lyrics of a song written by someone who I know you all know. I consider him one of our great, maybe our greatest prophet. His Hebrew name, thank you Wikipedia, is Shabtai Zissel ben Avraham. He was then known as Bob Zimmerman from Hibbing, Minnesota, and Duluth, Minnesota, first Duluth and then Hibbing. And this is a song that resonates with me. I'll talk a little more about it, but, and I should have said this initially, a trigger warning, because before the hopes and dreams comes the dark, the nightmare. Unfortunately, for the last several years, I have felt in a complete, well, close to a nervous breakdown about what's going on in society. And the crises which seem to have multiplied, the accretion of crises, really a tsunami of crises, has left me in a rather difficult state. And I usually am pretty okay personality-wise in terms of how I feel about life. But the last several years, I have been honestly just devastated. And Bob Dylan, in many ways, responds to that. And I was going to deconstruct or interpret much of this, but I won't do that. I'll rather just reference a couple of lines here. Number 2, there must be some way out of here, said the Joker to the thief. There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief. That really summarizes how I've been feeling over the last year. Recently, of course, with the pandemic seemingly ebbing and the light at the end of the tunnel, it hasn't been quite so bad. But that really is how I felt, completely confused with no relief in sight. The next line that I'll read is, let me see where it is. The third stanza. So let us not talk falsely now. The hour is getting late. And that summarizes to some extent where I am or where I've been, which is this, these are apocalyptic times. Now I've never experienced apocalypse. I've been in a couple auto accidents. I've had 4 hip replacements, but apocalypse, no, that has never befallen me. But I feel like this is apocalypse. I feel like this is what many people are calling an inflection point in history, that this is a critical moment and we have one of 2 ways to go: towards the dark or progress and essentially resurrecting or saving our civilization, certainly Western civilization, for the children. So for me, what resonates in this particular quote is, let us not talk falsely. There's so many people who seem to be living in falsity, in delusion, in conspiracy theories, in the classic example most of you know, or many of you know, of being zapped by Jewish lasers. And I find that incomprehensible. I just cannot accept it. And again, I feel totally confused that people actually subscribe or accept those ideas. The hour is getting late and we need to get out of that. So that's the dark tunnel that I've been in for at least a few years. Feel like a bit like I'm coming out of it, but that's the tunnel that is really the preamble to my hopes and dreams. So my hopes and dreams, what are they? Oh, let me just one thing. Let me backtrack for a second. I'd also like to quote another dark apocalyptic poem. This is from W.B. William Butler Yeats, written after the First World War, 1920-21. And two lines from this. It has a lot of Christian apocalyptic allegory in it, but these two lines really are maybe two of the most famous lines in poetry in the 20th century. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. And again, I apologize for being so dark, but the darkness is, I am really worried that the center cannot hold, that we are at, again, this inflection point in history. And we have to respond. We have to find an answer. How do we get out of here? How do we progress and get through this terribly difficult time? My answer, again, 2 words, more Judaism. Okay. Judy, if you can put the third insert on the screen. This is a quote from a book by Thomas Cahill. And I'll put the book up on the screen. The book is called, oops, that's the wrong book. The book is The Gifts of the Jews, How a Tribe of Desert Nomads Changed the Way Everyone Thinks and Feels. This is a book that I read about 20 years ago. It resonated with me. I reread it a couple of months ago. Didn't have quite the same impact, but I thought I would if you indulge me, read this quote and just talk about it for a couple of minutes. The Jews started it all. By it, I mean so many of the things we care about, the underlying values that make all of us, Jew, Gentile, believer, atheist, tick. Without the Jews, we would see the world through different eyes, hear with different ears, even feel with different feelings. And not only would our sensorium, the screen through which we receive the world, be different, we would think with a different mind, interpret all that befalls, all our experience differently, draw different conclusions from the things that befall us, and we would set a different course for our lives. Cahill goes on, our history is replete with examples of those who have refused to see what the Jews are really about, who, through intellectual blindness, racial chauvinism, xenophobia, or just plain evil, have been unable to give this oddball tribe, this raggle-taggle band, this race of wanderers who are the progenitors of the Western world their due. Wow. Wow. If I had any common sense, I would just stop there. That does not seem to be my strong suit. So I will go on. Really, it's game, set, over. He says it all. More Judaism. We've done everything. This is such an expansive view, however, seemingly to me, a very exaggerated view, that I find it hard to accept it. I don't know if the Jews had really all of that influence that everybody in the Western civilization sees differently, thinks differently, perceives differently because of Judaism, which I am, by the way, this is my metaphor, dubbing monotheism 1.0. I just don't feel that that's the case. And as I read the book for the second time, he didn't seem to provide an answer for me. Interestingly, I did find an answer, or at least come up with an answer, remarkably. And the answer was, in a high holiday sermon, the first story told of in that sermon by our esteemed, revered, gifted Rabbi Emeritus Les Gutterman, who it just gives masterful sermons, and he literally hits it out of the park every time. Sometimes he settles for a double or a triple, but typically it's out of the park. And this was again a high holiday sermon that he gave, and he started with a story, read joke, as he did so many, which was integral, I think that's a word, integral to the sermon. And it spoke to me, and it really did. And I think it summarized really quite beautifully what I'm trying to say, what I think is important about Judaism, and really Judaism in a much broader sense, what Judaism can bring to the table to help us get out of this, what I'm saying is an apocalyptic situation. The joke goes something like this, with apologies to less. It seems there was the Soviet Union, the Russian Soviets decided that they were going to celebrate their Sovietness with their Polish counterparts who were now part of the Soviet Union. They invited a delegation of Soviets from Poland to the Kremlin. They decided in honor of this grand moment, this coming together, they would have a portrait of Lenin in Poland. And they would go to the top Soviet realist painter and they ask him, and they say, they said, we're going to give you the honor of painting a portrait of Lenin in Poland. The Soviet realist painter looks at them and says, "Niet," in perfect Russian. "Niet, I'm not going to do it." And they look at him, "Oh, really? You're not going to do it? Why?" Lenin was never in Poland. They go to the next great Soviet realist painter, and same response, "Niet, he was never in Poland." They go down the list. They finally get to, at the bottom of the pantheon of Soviet realist painters, a small Jewish painter, no renown, and they ask him, "Can you paint us a portrait of Lenin in Poland?" And the Jewish artist says, "Well, Lenin was never in Poland." And they say, "Yeah, well, we know that, but and he thinks and thinks and thinks, and he turns to them and says, "You know something? I've got an idea. Let me see if I can do it." The big day comes. The Polish delegation is ushered into the Great Hall, the Kremlin. Everybody is there. The painting, which is life-size, larger than life-size, is on the wall. The Jewish painter is holding the whatever he holds to drop the curtain. The curtain is red with the hammer insignia on it. He gets the signal. He drops the drape and unveils the portrait. It's a portrait, and the people look at it. The Russians and the Poles look at it. It's a portrait of a man and a woman. Now, life-size, bigger than life-size, naked in bed. Everybody is aghast. The head of the Russian Politburo looks at him and says, "Well, what's that? What is, who's the man?" And the Polish painter, the Jewish Polish painter, the Jewish Russian painter, says, "Well, that's Trotsky." "Well, who's the woman?" And he says, "Well, the woman is Ludmilla." "Well, who's Ludmilla?" "Ludmilla is Lenin's wife." "Well, where's Lenin?" "Lenin's in Poland." That's Rabbi Gutterman's joke. It blew me away, because it really, I think, identifies what the qualities are in the monotheism 1.0's operating system that are critical to these times. And let me do something very dangerous. I'm going to deconstruct the joke, if I can, at least deconstruct it as I see it. Number one, two parts of this. The Russian Soviet realist painters were incapable of thinking out of their frame of reference. They knew that Lenin was never in Poland, but they could not think beyond that frame of reference. And at some risk, they refused to do it. The Jewish painter, on the other hand, A, knew that Lenin was in Poland, but B, was capable of responding to the challenge. He was capable of responding to the challenge of what he had to do. 3, he was capable of thinking abstractly, outside the box. And I sort of hate myself for saying that, because it's been around for 600 years, and saying it means I can't be creative enough to come up with a better aphorism of thinking outside the box, but it's a perfectly good aphorism. But the Jewish painter was capable of doing that. He could move beyond what was in front of him, what was the immediate frame of reference. So he knew fact from fiction. He accepted the challenge. He was thinking, he could think abstractly. And the 4th thing, and maybe the most difficult, and I'm going to come back to this in a couple of minutes and then finish, but the most important thing, I think, was that he was capable of a thought experiment. If what then? If what then? Well, we know Lenin was never in Poland, but if Lenin's dreaded enemy, Trotsky, was sleeping with his wife, Ludmila, well, then he might be in Poland. It's conceivable that he might be in Poland. And that ability to hold 2 conflicting thoughts in mind at once, really an internal dialectic, not a dialectic with someone else where you're trying to resolve 2 different opinions. The old adage, two Jews, 3 opinions. Well, in this case, we should think ourselves lucky. It could be 2 Jews, 4 opinions, because we're arguing within our own heads. But he comes up with a thought experiment that makes it conceivable for Lenin to be in Poland. Lenin in Poland, Lenin not in Poland. Okay, over here, let me just, my ring gal, Jill, this was from boxing, has just brought up round 10, 3 minutes. Yikes. I'm almost out of here. I'm almost out of here, but thank you. So to me, this was a brilliant description of what it is, what the qualities are among Jews that really are so essential to these times, that will help us hold the sun center together. And again, let me just repeat, go back just 1 minute, if you maybe bear with me, I apologize. But it seems to me when Abraham started the monotheism one and believed in God, and his followers followed him, and were chosen people. The chosen people actually were making a covenant. They self-selected. They chose to be chosen. So they chose because they had certain qualities that allowed them to think abstractly, number 1, about a God who was ineffable and inscrutable and whose name you couldn't even pronounce. That was number 1. Number 2, they were able to think of a God who was a challenging God, who made people do things. For instance, a classic, really the best example, Abraham, you've got to sacrifice your son, your beloved son, Isaac. And Abraham goes ahead and does it, or at least starts to. We know what the outcome is, but he's prepared to do it. And even more inconceivable, he doesn't tell his wife. I mean, he doesn't. Could you imagine, Jill, could you imagine me not telling you? It's inconceivable. And he does it, but he does it, and it turns out okay, thank goodness. But it's a challenging God of the Jews. The third thing I would say is God can be, on the one hand, the grand creator. He can be, or she, or it can be loving, magnanimous. On the other hand, the God of the Jews can, and I'm going to be diplomatic. I don't have much time, so I got to be diplomatic. This God can be a touch, just a little touch, maybe just like this kind of touch, hardly notice it. Cranky. The God of the Jews can be cranky. So again, it's 2 thoughts going on at the same time. And that really, to hold 2 different thoughts at one time is is just incredibly intellectually challenging and difficult. And that's what Jews can do. And that's why my hopes and dreams are, we got to get the hell out of this mess. How do we do it? The way to do it is by first being able to identify what's real from what's unreal, delusional, fantastic. Know that, and that's the Russian painter. 2, to be able to think abstractly. 3, to be able to accept challenges and move forward. And 4, to be able to, again, use through thought experiments, answer incredibly difficult questions about our society, about overcoming things like this terrible racial divide, which is an open wound in our society and really has been an open wound for who knows how long. Let me just end, because I'm going to go back to Cahill. And even though I found the book not as impressive as when I read it 20 years ago, there is something in here that I think is meaningful, and at least I'll leave on a very positive note. Let me get to it. Sorry. Just take me 1 second and I'm out of here. So this is the final quote from Cahill. This great overwhelming movement exemplified the stories of Abraham and Moses, makes history real to human consciousness for the first time, with the future really dependent on what I do in the present, what we do today. This movement, the movement of time, is the movement of time, which once past becomes history. But the movement is not like the movement of a wheel, as all other societies had imagined. It is not cyclical, coming around again and again. Each moment, like each destiny, is unique. And see if I can turn the page. Unrepeatable. It is a process. It is going somewhere, although no one knows can say where. Possibly like this Jim Tobak talk, but I'm almost done. And because its end is not yet, it is full of hope. My hopes and dreams, my hopes and dreams. I hope all our hopes and dreams. And I am free to imagine that it will not be just process, but progress. And boy, do we need it. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry to take so much time. See you later.
Jim, I began my hopes and dreams some 45 years ago when I first began inviting a congregant to do this theme the first Friday night of a new secular year. This is the first month of the Jewish year, and you have carried this tradition on beautifully. More Judaism, more Jim Tobak. And if you remember the joke that I told, it was memorable because I told the entire thing in Polish. It's no small thing. It was an inspired choice for Sarah Mack, who is inspired to choose you with Judy. God bless you. It was, and if you could just write out your remarks about me so I can send it to friends. Take care. Mazel tov.
Yes, I will have him land there. You told another great joke, by the way, in that sermon. I couldn't remember it, but maybe you'll tease out of your memory. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thanks, Les. Much appreciated.
Jim, I just want to thank you. It was beautiful. And I can send you what was in the chat room later. And unless anyone has a specific question, we'll let everybody get back to the beautiful day. But it was really, truly inspiring and beautiful.
Thank you. But if anyone wants to know about my hairstyle, my wife treated me to her hairstylist, the first one I've ever had. So this is the best I've looked in months. Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Thanks, everyone.